What was the last topic which we studied? No clue? Okay. So we were looking at the performance testing, right? This was something.
Tuning.
Yeah, tuning, system tuning and all. We did capacity planning, we did benchmarking, we did tuning. Of course, we had already talked about. We talked about latency, a very important topic, and how the latency contributes to the overall delay, you can say, or maybe the time consumes for the entire event. And then before that, we were looking at the some basic throughputs and performance and some examples we took. This was all we did. So let's focus on any clue on what we are going to study today. I mean, we are going to definitely move to a step ahead, right? So in this case, any idea that what kind of thing we are going to do?
So did we cover user acceptance yet?
Very correct, very correct, very correct, very correct, Jan. So what we have is that we went for all sorts of testing processes, right? That would be, right from the white box, black box integration system. Now it's time for your user acceptance testing. That means strategy wise, if we recall, we started with unit testing, irrespective of what kind of technique I'm going to follow. Then we went for interface testing, that is your integration testing, means we were checking the interface. And afterwards, we went for system testing. And now what we have is we are left with your user acceptance testing. This thing is also called as UAT in your short form. So here what we do is that definitely I can combine your alpha testing. I can have my beta testing here, and I can also have before this I can also have your operational acceptance testing, which is nothing but your OAT, right? Not the OAT which you people are familiar with, but this is a different one, which is your operational acceptance testing. So what we have is we do this particular testing with the help of maybe what we do is we go ahead with user acceptance testing, which is done by your customers or the representative of customers, because now it is the time for the user to accept this particular thing. And these acceptance tests are written to execute your near real life scenarios. So the verification of your functional requirements and non-functional aspects of the system is done, because now the end user is going to go ahead with testing the product in order to accept it, right? So either end user or the representative of the end users or the customers, you can call it as. Right. So these are some of the aims of user acceptance testing, and this user acceptance testing, or the UAT, is a testing methodology where your clients or the end users or the representative of the end users will be involved in the testing of this particular product. And the main purpose or the main aim is to validate the product against the specified requirements. And this UAT is basically performed at client's location, right? People involved will be, of course, the end users, and this is something which is the last phase. This is something which is the last phase of my testing. Of course, regression is something which will come after, but right. So that cannot be included here because that would be post deployment. So the main purpose of user acceptance testing is to validate your end to end business flows. And obviously, it is not going to focus on some small petty errors where I have, like, let's say I'm looking for the spelling mistake, or maybe I'm looking at the, how my document looks like, because it's like it's at the very end phase. And this will be carried out in a separate testing environment with the production like data setup. So it will be like a black box testing where two or more users will be end users will be involved. Now the aim of acceptance testing is to determine whether the software is fit for the user or not, and this will definitely make the user confident about the product. We can determine whether a software system satisfies its acceptance criteria or not in this particular case. This will also enable the buyer to determine whether to accept the system or not. Because see, from the title itself, we have got an idea that okay, there is something which is UAT, which is user acceptance testing. So here the buyer is going to determine whether to accept the system or not. And in this particular case, we do have like acceptance testing failure scenarios as well. And what it is going to result me is that the failure of this user acceptance testing may result into product rejection, that I'll take a call that okay, I am not going to, as an end user, I am not going to accept this particular user, sorry, this particular product. As an end user, I'll declare that okay, I reject this particular product. Obviously this will lead to some and probably the major financial loss. I may have to rework on this particular product, and ultimately it will lead to some serious loss of efforts and time, obviously, because it we are at a very later stage of my software development life cycle. So in that case, if I see the acceptance testing failure and my product is going to be rejected, so I am definitely going to lose good amount of efforts and good amount of time in this particular scenario. Now these are some acceptance criterias, right? Acceptance criterias means that we will go ahead with either the product acceptance or the procedure acceptance and the service level agreements. If all these things are fulfilling, obviously I cannot say no to this particular product. Now the point is, I'll go into detail about all these things, but some of the questions which arise uh, before we move to this acceptance criteria is that who all perform this UAT. Now this is the open question for you guys. Who all perform this UAT?
Engineers from the client side.
Yeah, yeah. So majorly the clients and your end users or the representative of the end users. So these will be the ones who will be performing the user acceptance testing. So see, what we see is that we move from development to testing. Right, I am drawing a subset of my software development life cycle, and then I am adding this user acceptance testing. Right, I am extracting it from the very old testing phase from it, and in that case what we do is that post this user acceptance testing, I go for production. Here means I go ahead with deployment. Right, I'll specifically write this particular part. Yeah, so Ujjwal has a very good question. So, does quality assurance engineer perform this testing or not? No. The answer is no. Now, acceptance means I'm going to give a green signal for this. Quality assurance engineers. So, when we are talking about quality assurance, it's the software quality assurance field (SQA). That's not not this software architecture, but this is something which is software quality assurance, and this is something which is entirely different. Here, my focus will be that whether my product is meeting several standards or not. Right, and then I'll focus on all those non-functional attributes. I'll see that okay whether it is CMM level 3 or 4 or 5. These things will be a part of your quality analysis in this particular case. So definitely my quality assurance team plays a very important role, but your acceptance criteria is something bit different, right? Definitely a sub part of your software quality assurance. See, SQA is something which is a broader umbrella, right? This user acceptance is something which is comparatively a smaller component of my software quality assurance. I hope I'm able to clarify your doubt, Ujjwal. Okay. So basically, there is a need of user acceptance testing once your software has already undergone your unit testing, your integration testing, your system testing, and that too after my software, which is built based on the requirements document, and the developers have used their own understanding and further have brought some changes during the development, and sometimes they might have not been able to effectively communicate to the testing team. So for testing whether the final product is accepted by the client or the end user testing, we go ahead with user acceptance testing. That means I have some requirements. Based on that, my developers have come up with some products, but in between during the development phase they thought of bringing some changes, right? Because they felt that okay, there is a need of bringing those changes. So later on in the accept UAT phase, which is your user acceptance testing, we take a call that okay, whatever changes have been made, it's like still it is not bringing, it is definitely adding a cherry to the cake, not bringing any adverse impact. So developers have included the features on their own based on their own understanding. Now all these requirements which are changed are not communicated effectively, so in that case we go ahead with assurance part, and that's why we go ahead with user acceptance testing. Also, your developers code the software based on the requirements, and these may not actually be what the client actually need from the softwares. So that can also be one of the case. Your acceptance, if you recall your one of the very popular model, which was your V model. V model has a separate phase which has this acceptance testing, and this acceptance testing is in touch with your requirements, right? In case of SMEs, and in case of some startups as well, what they do is that they don't go for those previous system testing and other stuff. Sometimes they directly jump to the UAT, because that speeds up their overall process, right? That speeds up their overall process. So now let's talk about product acceptance. So each of my requirements which were specified in my SRS are associated with the acceptance criteria. And sometimes, one or more requirements may be mapped to form the acceptance criteria. Your prioritization of the requirements and the product meeting the requirements is something which is to be considered. So I what I do is, in case of your product acceptance, I'm looking for the requirements which are associated with the acceptance criteria. Now, your acceptance criteria is defined on your functional correctness and completeness. It is also defined on the basis of your data integrity, usability, performance, timeliness, scalability, documentation, and so on and so forth. Now, the categories of the test cases are grouped to form the acceptance criteria. And testing for adherence to any specific legal or contractual terms is also falling under your product acceptance. Testing for compliance to specific laws, for example, I have like Sarbanes-Oxley law. I've given the reference at the end. So this is basically a law that gives you an idea that, okay, what all things can be included in an application, and what all things can be excluded, right? So this is something which is a broader act. This came in the year 2000, somewhere in the year 2002. So that was dealing with not only with the softwares, but it was also dealing with financial transactions, financial reports, and so on and so forth. So this law is something which is a huge one that has a separate, importance as far as any kind of products are concerned. Now, so what we have is, we had product acceptance. Now we have the procedure acceptance. That means a kind of procedure I'm going to follow that needs to be accepted by the end users. So the user, the administration, and the troubleshooting should be a part of product release. That is one of the procedure. Along with the executables, binary and source code of the product to be delivered in a CD. So that is once again a clause which I have kept in a process. This is one of the example. We can have several other examples as well. A minimum of 20 employees to be trained on the product usage prior to the deployment, right? One more example we have, like we can have similar kind of examples in this particular case. Then we have like service level agreements, right? It can be like for first few years it would be free of cost, and then so on and so forth. So service level agreement is a part of contract signed by the customer and the product organization. That means the end users for which the product is built, and the company which has come up with this particular product. So all major defects that come up during the first 3 months of the deployment need to be fixed free of cost. Downtime of the system should be less than an hour per quarter, and all major defects to be fixed within 24 hours. Right, this is my service level agreement. So next is you're selecting test cases for acceptance testing. So what we have is we have like end-to-end functionality verification. I have like domain tests. I have like user scenarios. I have basic sanity tests. I have some new functionality tests and a new non-functional tests and tests pertaining to the legal obligations and SLAs. Then I have like acceptance test data. So all these things are like something which can be utilized in order to go ahead with user acceptance testing. Now, the point is that I need to have some basic prerequisites of user acceptance testing, right? That would be the entry criteria. So, what all things I should have? Like, I should have, you know, the business requirements available with me. Undoubtedly, the end users will be having the business requirements. Application code, if it is there in the clause, your unit testing, integration testing should be completed, and regression testing should be completed with no major defects if required, because it's like at the end of the other stuff, right? Mainly, regression testing comes after the product is in use for maybe few days by the end users. Then my UAT environment should also be ready, the kind of environment we have. So what we do is that we have the acceptance test team. So definitely the people who are involved in a day-to-day activities of product development and usage will be the part of this acceptance test team. And people who are familiar with the scenarios will be the key people who can test this particular product. Then I have like product management support and consulting team also to be added in this acceptance test team. People having good knowledge about the customers are must to be added or included in this particular team. And yes, people with prior business process knowledge are always advisable to be added to this particular thing. So what we have is we have a multi-phase testing model for this. So before that, let me give you some idea on how to do this particular user acceptance testing. So what we can do is, we can analyze the requirements. Something happened. Yeah. So we can analyze the requirements. That's the first thing. Afterwards, what I can do is I can go ahead with user acceptance testing plan. I'll come up with a plan for user acceptance testing. Then I need to identify test scenarios. Afterwards, I'll create UAT test cases. So once the test cases are created, what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead with the test data preparation. Then I'll go ahead with test run, and then I'll confirm the business objectives. Right. So this is how I am going to do the user acceptance testing. Right. So any doubts up till now? Any doubts up till now? Okay, okay. So now this is something which is too strict entry criteria. The reason being that okay, there's something which is like once one phase is over, then I'm moving to this. Once this. So if you see in this timeline, this results into a very time consuming process. Right. This is something which is a time consuming process. So the next thing is like this is something which is too mild, right? One above the other. I'll definitely I'm able to finish it in a very short span of time. And then what we do is that we end up goofing up just because of too much overlap. Now this is something which is the optimized entry criteria, right? So this looks pretty decent. That okay, there is mild overlap and definitely there is some free space. So in short span of time, I'm able to optimize these things. Right. This is how we optimize the entry criteria. Any doubts up till now? Any doubts up till now? I hope you people are here. Yes, sir.
Uh,
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, fine, fine. So let's once again move to this particular part and then we'll finish this particular discussion. So when we were dealing with the steps involved in doing the UAT, so what we do is in case of analysis of the business requirement, what we do is we go ahead with reading the project charter, we go ahead with looking for business use cases, we look for your process flow diagrams, we look for your business requirements documents, we look for your system requirement specification, and these documents helps us in analyzing the business requirements. And for this UAT plan, what we do is that we automate and we come up with a test plan outline to strategize the way in which we can verify and ensure that an application meets its business requirements. So basically it documents the exit criteria, right? And the entry criteria and the test scenarios and the test cases approach plus the timelines of the testing, the one which we saw in the next few slides, right? Because after this we move to your entry and exit criteria. That's how this is a part of your UAT plan. In identifying the test scenarios and the test cases, we identify it with respect to the high level business process and create test cases with clear test steps. Your test cases should sufficiently cover most of the UAT scenarios, right? So business use cases are the input for creating the test cases. Then what we have is we have like test data preparation. So the best thing is to use the live data for user acceptance testing. So data should be scrambled for privacy and security reasons, and testers should be familiar with the database flow as well. For test runs, I can execute the test cases and report the bugs if any, because reporting of the bug is something which is a part of your testing process, irrespective of any kind of testing which you are going to follow. And then I need to retest. I need to retest once my bug is fixed. Right, so I need to retest it. I can use the test management tools in it. I can use these test management tools for this and for confirming the business objective. meeting or not, the business analysts or UAT testers need to send a sign off mail after this UAT testing is done. And after the sign off, the product is good to go for your production. Right, here we saw in one of the previous diagrams, we saw that the product goes for production. Uh, I think I've erased that particular diagram, or I'm unable to locate that. Let me draw it once again for you. Yeah, so what I was saying was we have like development, right? Then I have like testing. Then I have my UAT, and after this, the sign off, I go for production part. Right, after this sign off, I go for production part. This is what I was saying. Okay, I have added here. Sorry, I missed to locate this particular diagram. Right, that means from the product development to the testing to the user acceptance and finally the production or my deployment. Yeah, so coming back to this, the last one is the sign off where we go ahead with a green signal for development and deployment. Now, when we talk about you know the exit criteria, for UAT, so what I do is before like moving into production, I need to consider that no major defects are open. Then my business process work, my business process works fine, and UAT sign off is done with all the stakeholders. All right, so this is basically the exit criteria for your user acceptance testing. So some of the best practices for UAT can be that okay, you can prepare the UAT plan very early in the project life cycle. You can prepare the checklists before this UAT starts. You can conduct some pre-UAT session during system testing phase. You can set the expectation and you can define the scope of UAT very well. You can test the end-to-end business flow and avoid the system tests. You can test the system or the application with real world scenarios and the data, and you can perform the usability testing prior to it. You can conduct the feedback session and meeting before moving to the production part. So these are the references which I took, right? Salvens, this Salvens Oxley's law is there in soxlaw.com. Then I took from some stuff from ISTQB. ISTQB, okay, what is ISTQB? What is ISTQB? Any idea? So basically, ISTQB stands for the International Software Testing Qualifications Board. So many of the companies preferred that okay, you qualify ISTQB exam
in order to be a part of testing team and so on and so forth. So, right. So whatever we have covered till now is sufficient for you people to clear this ISTQB level 1 and 2 exams easily. Easily. I mean, you Google the kind of questions which they ask, you will find that okay, we have covered a lot as far as ISTQB questions are concerned. Right. So this was all about your UAT, which is your user acceptance testing. If you have any doubts, then let me know.